Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finding the Unicorn in You. Today, I have a marketing minimalist, award-winning international speaker, and a podcaster herself. She has developed proven formulas that have helped herself and her clients to create 1 year of marketing content in 5 days. Her innovative approach helps overwhelm business owners and burnt out nonprofit directors to achieve success and freedom through the power of absolute marketing. Now, without further ado, I have Elizabeth Pampalone.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming along. I'm actually really excited. And like I was telling you off before we started, the thing that really caught my attention from you is you had a unique signature on your email. You had a little GIF. So what inspired you to do that?
I actually had a photo shoot done a few years ago. And when we were doing the photo shoot, I'm a kind of quirky person. I have big personality. And so I just started making faces and doing poses. And the photographer was like, yeah, we can do more of that. And so I just stood there for probably maybe 20 minutes making different poses, different faces, and thinking of ways that I would use it maybe on social media or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we did that, she tried to get other clients to do it as well. And she still says to this day that I'm the only one that was able to do it without her prompting anything. But we ended up taking all those photos and I made a GIF of them because it was like, why not? And I love movement in things that don't normally have movement. And so putting it on email signature was just a great way to make it really simple. And one of the things I use is in my pro toolkit is this email signature creator, and it's free. So it makes it so easy to make all that stuff.
I love it. And it definitely catches the eye. And it just brought like a smile to my face as I was looking through several emails that day. And I was like, oh, wow, that's nice. So it does definitely do its job. So
That's the idea.
yeah. So let's talk about your background. What even got you into marketing and saying, this is my passion and this is the route that I want to go?
So I actually started building websites 23 years ago
Wow.
in 2000. And I just loved it. And I was coding by hand, learned HTML, learned CSS on my own, and then ended up getting a degree in web programming. Knew that I could get a job in that field and make pretty good money, but I was put in a cubicle and put to work on some developing projects as a developer. And I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. This isn't going to work for my personality, for who I am. And so I ended up going through some personal things, leaving the state that I was born in and moving over 1,000 miles away to a new state. And I basically got to Florida and I was like, I don't really have what am I supposed to do here? I don't have any idea what to do. And my mom said, just pick 2 things you like and make a job. So I actually started a computer repair company because I liked fixing computers for senior adults. And I would teach them how to use email, how to fix their computers. I would go to their homes, fix their computers. And then I started teaching classes, which I loved teaching classes on anything random computer things, Microsoft Word, stuff like that. And then from there, I started meeting business owners. And I had been doing all my own marketing. But these business owners, I didn't realize there were other ones out there. I think you get isolated, it's only me. And so I started to go to these business owners and tell them how to market their business. And they were like, I don't know how to do all those things. And so then I started teaching classes on that. I started doing sessions with individual business owners. And then I eventually just went into web design. So then I had 2 companies at that point. And I eventually ended up selling the computer repair one and keeping the marketing business because that's where I was going all along. But I got a little detour in there.
Wow. What a pivot. And it's amazing how you took what you had and then you just made something out of it. And was it scary for you letting go of your original business since you had put so much time and effort into that one?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was huge because it was really what was making all the money. And what I've always done, anytime I've had to pivot, and I've had to pivot 3 times in my career, 3 major times and many times in between there. But the 3 major ones, I always take what I have and try and keep it as long as possible while I make the ratio swap. So, for example, my new thing might be 10% of what I'm doing. And my other thing is 90%, but I really want to get it to 60-40 where the old thing is on the small end. Right. And so then I can leave that old thing and know that I'm 60% of the way there. So that's what I've always done, but it is a very scary prospect. But if you're able to again, like I said, start small and add 10% to what you're doing and take away 10% from the old thing and add 10% to the new thing and just keep moving in that direction until you get over that mark, like the 50% mark. Then it makes it much easier and a lot less scary because you're building something long term. You're not building something that you're just flash in the pan. I'm just going to do this for right now and see what happens. You're actually building something that's going to last a long time.
Okay. And what did you do personally to not let that fear of change or that fear of that imposter syndrome take advantage of you and say, you know what, I'm actually going to try this new thing, whether it works or not, I'm going to give it a shot. Like, how do you convince yourself to get through that?
Definitely being okay with failing. And that's not something I'm good at because I'm type A personality, firstborn child, to do all the things right. Don't mess up your grades. If you mess up your grades, it'll mess up your life. And like all those kinds of things are like in my brain and ingrained. And it gives you a sense of drive and purpose to be the best at something. But at the same time, it also gives you, like you said, that kind of complex of, oh my gosh, if I do fail, it's the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that being able to start in small increments. So when I first started my computer repair business, I was working as a hostess at a restaurant and that was making me almost no money. It was paying like the bills, like just the bills.
Yeah.
But then I was able to say to them, hey, I'm going to work in the evenings only, still make pretty good money. And I'm going to do during the day. I'm going to get up. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to go after these clients. I'm going to teach these classes during the day. So I would be working at 9:00 in the morning, teaching classes, do a couple computer repair things for people from the classes, and then go straight to the hostess jobs. Then I'd be done at 10, 11, 12, and then finally get home, go to bed, get up and do it again. It was something that I was able to say, can I fit this into my life? Is it going to be hard? Yes. But can I fit it into my life in some incremental ways before I take the full dive? And when I finally quit those jobs, the jobs that I had, little part-time jobs that kind of cobbled together over the years, it was like, this had better work. But I felt like I had built so much into it. Like I had prepped so much and it had been like 2 years of doing it that way. And it was getting to a burnout point or getting to where I can't do this, keep going. And so that's when I realized, look at those numbers. What am I bringing in? I'm making a lot more money at that point, which was nice. And it was almost double my income from previous years. But then saying, okay, we've gone by on this kind of income before. We can go back to that for a little bit, knowing that we're still growing. We're still ramping up. We're not just stagnating. Because in a hostess job, you get paid what you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't even any tips.
Yeah.
And so with this job, there was always potential. There's always growth. And so having these little things that kind of give you this little tiny bit of confidence, whether it's the numbers, whether it's we've been here before, we can do it again, we'll be fine, we can see growth is happening. All those little tiny things really add up to erasing that imposter syndrome. But at the same time, you have to be realistic with what you're doing. If you're not seeing those things, if you're not getting those little confidence boosts, you can't move forward and say, this is going to be my thing. And even though it's like totally crashing and burning and you're just ignoring that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've been in those positions where I've had to humble myself down and take a lower position to go to a different trajectory. And it's one of the most hardest things you can do because you're like, I've gotten used to this level of income. I've gotten used to this level of this lifestyle. And now I'm going to have to cut back. And it does feel like you're failing a little bit, but you have to stay patient in order to look at the long term, the goal.
Absolutely. A lot of people in this day and age, unfortunately, don't have that patience. And then they get frustrated and then they leave their first love, if you will. And then they just go on to something else that they really don't want to do because it makes the money or because it does XYZ and lifestyle parts or whatever. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of people out there that have good ideas, that have enough drive to get it done. Maybe not as much as they need, but they have enough. And that's the other thing. You have to be driven. And I feel like entrepreneurship specifically is not for everybody. No, not everyone is built for this. It's a very hard life. But then once you get to a certain point in entrepreneurship, it becomes like you just pass this point and you're like, oh my gosh, I actually did all the things. I've gotten to the point, I've done all the things. And it's not like you're done, but you just passed that point where the hustle, the struggle, all of that stuff is is really behind you and you're coasting, but you're also looking at what can I innovate? What can I do next? And you feel more creative. And it just, I don't know, it's just a really nice place to be. And I can definitely say I'm there now, thankfully, but it has been 16 years.
Yeah, and it's a learning curve. And even then, like with the pandemic happening and all of these things, just curveballs just getting thrown at us with the
Yeah.
economy, it doesn't make it easy. But you have to keep
Yeah.
going, you have to keep learning and pushing yourself and being that unicorn that you are and just striving for the best. And you've done it. You've done like proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, absolutely. And pivoting is key because you have to be ready to do that. Even if people tell you're crazy, even if they're like, that's not going to work, or why are you doing that now? No one's even doing that. It's like when you see in the news, somebody will come up with some idea or they'll come out with some thing they're saying and everybody's like, that's not going to happen. You're crazy. That's dumb. They don't make sense. It's so far out in the future that they can see it, but nobody else can see it. And they just think they're crazy. And so I've had that happen to me like 4 times in the marketing space. And I've been proven out every single time. And I've pivoted my business toward those areas in those times. And people looked at me and they said, that's crazy. We don't know why you're doing this. It worked for me. I was one of the pioneers in those instances. And people were saying, I have never heard of this. I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this. And now you're hearing many people are doing this. But then again, they're not doing it well. And so then you got that aspect of it. But it's a really interesting place to be when you can get to a point in your career with your industry to be able to look out and go, this is totally coming. This is totally happening. And people are like, that's not. And one of the things was people leaving social media and the kind of mass exodus that happened. And while social media is not dead and gone, I never thought it would be, but it's a bit different than it used to be. Even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, looking back to 2007, you've got a huge fluctuation in what's happened and how advertising works and how it doesn't work and what people still think happens and what doesn't happen. So much of that stuff is so different. And for 3-4 years ago, I guess it was right before the pandemic, I left all social medias except LinkedIn. And I even went off social media for 9 months as an experiment to basically show people no one's paying attention. And I was proven right for the most part. And I came back to LinkedIn only because that's where my people are and that's where my clients are. So I want to be there with them. I want to find new ones, but all the other ones don't make sense for me anymore. And it's just this really funny thing that years ago I was saying, this is my only platform. People are like, you're crazy. You need to be on Facebook. You need to be on Instagram. And I'm like, no, I don't. And it never hurt my business. It didn't do anything, but you see all these people leaving platforms and staying with the one that they like, the one that works for them. Just even as personal use. It's just really interesting. So little things like that you can see when you've been in the industry for so long. And when you see those things, I say jump on them. Because if you jump on them now, you're going to be ahead of the curve rather than everybody else going, oh man, I'm trying to catch up.
I agree with you 1,000%. Like personally, having my own business, I try to do what everybody was saying. You need to be in all the social media platforms. You need to put in diverse and repurpose. But when you're a one-man show or one woman show, it is so exhausting to try to be on 7 different social media platforms and then engage with all these people on all these 7 social media platforms.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just insane. And yes, then that may be conducive for someone who has a marketing team or like a social media team, but when it's just yourself, it's not doable.
And you can always like grow to that, right? Like you said, you can always get the team, you can always have the extra person helping you. And we will recommend that if somebody, maybe they need to be on 2 of them or even 3 of them, but not all of them. And there's ways of making yourself little strategies and little things you can do we have formulas that we use and it can really help. But then again, really just coming down to it and just being honest and saying, where are my people?
Exactly.
Where are they actually, where they live, work, and play, right? And sometimes it's literally not even on social media. Sometimes it's literally in that one magazine that all those people read and they get it delivered to their house every week or every month or whatever. And that's so minute and like specific, but then sometimes that's it.
You have to see what's the best return of investment. And that's what a lot of people wants to put their eggs on every single basket, but sometimes all you really need is 1 or 2 baskets and that's going to give you the best ROI.
Absolutely. And being out there, like putting yourself out there in person as well, or online events, things like that they get overlooked. It's like social media, just keep everybody's pounded that in their head. and then they get overwhelmed by it. And then there's all these other great things you could be doing that are just as free and just as exciting and probably even better for return on investment.
Exactly. And a lot of people are afraid to do that social part in social media, even in person. So
Yeah.
people are so used to being hidden from their phone, especially during the pandemic. We isolated ourselves from everybody that even if you're walking on the street, nobody's looking up. Everybody's looking down on
Mhm.
their phone. And a simple, hey, how's it going to the person that's crossing you? You never know what connection you can do. That could be a potential client, a potential network.
Yeah.
It's just different things. Or if you're in a coffee shop, people always look
Mhm.
at me weird when I'm like, "Hi, how's it going?" And then I start talking to them and I create friends by doing so. At first, they're a little resistant, but after that, we're like talking, making jokes, and exchanging business
Mhm.
cards at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And that's really how, going back to some of the kind of what I say old ways, that's how business has been done for decades,
Mhm.
eons.
Mhm.
And it's those things still work. And even if you have a business that's all online, you still need to have some kind of interaction. I've done a lot of classes with the federal thing for SCORE and SBA, and they have so many classes. It's these people get on there and they're not seen on camera, but they're talking to each other, they're in the chat, they're engaging with the speaker, and it makes it so much more okay, you're not alone. There's 150 people on this call. You're all talking to me. You're all telling me where you're from. You're all telling me what businesses you have. Some people have similar businesses and then they start talking to each other. And even something as simple as that is taking a class just to better your own self and your own business, meeting all those people. And now you can connect with them or find them on LinkedIn or whatever. Just something that simple is so effective.
Exactly, and I'm actually surprised, and this is something I recently started doing because I started doing a lot of, like, self-help and, mental health courses online where they do a Zoom class, and I just started introducing myself, "Hey, my name is Jaime, I'm a life coach, and I'm here from California," and people respond to you, "Oh, you're a life coach. What do you do? How do you focus?" In the chat, and then other people are diving
Yeah.
in there, and all of a sudden, I have 2 clients that just signed up for my services.
And also, like, you'll get like LinkedIn connections so there. People will see your full name. They'll find you on LinkedIn. They'll say, "Hey, are you on LinkedIn? Or can I find you on LinkedIn?" And be, "Yeah, absolutely, I'm on there." Or put your LinkedIn link in the chat as your just part of your like name. And here's my name and my LinkedIn bio or whatever. That's just so effective. And it's again using, like you said, the actual social part of social media in different forms, right? And maybe like through the Zoom call or through an in-person session or something. So yeah, I love doing that kind of stuff. I do so much networking locally even
Mhm.
though I don't do as much as I used to do 3 events a day, but I'm a little less on that now, but it's still really fun to go out and just talk to people and sit with them and hear what's going on with them and their stories. So don't neglect that part for sure.
Yeah, completely agree. Now switching a little bit, in life, we all go through several transitions, and you just mentioned several pivots that you went through yourself. Which one out of all of the pivots that you've gone through personally was the one that was most shocking to you?
I shocked myself the most with the last one, which was going from doing traditional marketing, 30-day websites, 60-day memberships, like just did long-term projects, charging a premium, taking 2 to 3 clients a month. That's my MO. That's what I was doing. I was burning out. Clients weren't getting me stuff. They would send me everything on the last day of their contract so they wouldn't get overcharged, extra charges. It was just so chaotic and so crazy. And so I literally in May of, I guess it was 2016 at this point, I just took everything off my website.
Mm,
And I said, we offer websites in one day, but you have to sit there with me for the whole day. And that's all I had on there. Like website in a day, little description, some bullet points, and I cut my price in half because I was only working with you for 8 hours. That was it.
mhm.
And I did provide lunch because it was in person. I only did in person stuff at that point. And so I had a client, new person, never heard of her, referred to me, called me, and she said, I need a website. I said, great, we do it in a day. She said, I also need a brand. I said, we also do that in a day. Had no clue what I was doing. And then she said, I also need social media. And I said, oh, we can do 6 months in a day and we'll schedule it out. No problem. I had no clue what I was doing with that either. So I had done my own stuff like that, obviously. I'd sit down for a day and schedule out a year of social media for myself, like for me. I had a program I used. So I was like, I could do it, but never done it for a client. Did the same thing with the branding, made many brands for myself really quickly. I said, perfect. I'll just use that same like process with her. She booked 3 days. So we basically went from cutting my price in half and taking on her for 1 day. Now she's booked 3 days. So I've now made 1.5 client basically from the same thing I was doing last month, 1.5 clients amount in 3 days in one phone call. It took 15 minutes. She was like sold immediately. I didn't have to explain it to her. I didn't have to convince her. I didn't have to give her all these numbers and give her all this ROI. No, she was like, I read it. I understand it. I need it. Let's do it. And the simplicity of it was key. So from there, I just stayed like that. And that's all we do now. We have 8 days that we offer. And they're obviously not our same prices in 2016, but just incrementally increasing it over time. And we have never gotten back to our original pricing from back then, like the one that was like, I can only take 2 clients a month kind of pricing. And we haven't even got back to that. So we haven't even gotten to that price, that doubled price yet. And that's such a testament that for all those years doing the same thing. And when people will come to me and say, I need to do it, I want to make my own podcast. We can do that in a day, creating the formula, creating the process and doing it, making it so simple. And all these things I've done myself previously. If I haven't done something myself, then I don't say we can do it in a day because I don't have any frame of reference. But most things, like I've built memberships, I've built e-commerce sites, I've done podcasts, I've been a guest on many podcasts, like how do you get on podcasts and all that stuff. So all the days that we offer, I've done it myself. And so just taking that experience, packaging it into a day, knowing what's needed, knowing what's extra fluff that's not necessary, and giving people something they can literally come in, learn, and walk away with has been so huge. And in 2016, people were telling me, you're crazy. What are you doing? They're never going to come back to you. You've helped them. You've fixed them. You've moved them on. And you've only made a little bit of money. So what good is that? And I said, no, this is where things are going. We need to be prepared for this. People told me I was crazy. And now you can go on any web designer's website and they call them VIP days. And they give you 5 or 6 hours of their time, which is not quite a full day. And then they will basically coach you through changes to your website, updates, things like that. And they're not rebuilding your site, which is what we do. They're not. So they're doing this little half hybrid thing, right? They took it, made it their own, which is good. But nobody's ever gotten to that full on, we're doing it in a day, the full thing. And that's where I was saying, like, you have these ideas, go for them. No one's really going to be able to copy you. Once you've been out there long enough and you're doing your thing, they might come along and say, oh yeah, we did that too. No, they don't. It's okay. You got this locked down. You're good. But it's just those ideas that come that pivoting like that was unheard of at that time. People were really skeptical. But as soon as I started booking 2-3 days at a time, I knew it was sustainable. And I might have 2 or 3 clients in a month, but they'd book an entire week. So my calendar was full. My bank account was full. I didn't have to worry about that. And I can only take 2 clients a month, but I was making 2, 3, 4 times as much and giving them so much more value just because of one idea that I had.
Exactly. And you're building so much more rapport and trust, and they're more likely to come back because you've worked with them and you gave them your undivided attention for such a long period of time. And even as you're saying it, I don't think I've ever heard of a business doing that.
It's so fascinating. And I know that it's sustainable to a point. I've trained other people to do this too. And my sister, she's trained in this and she can do it. But there's things that people say to me all the time, how could you grow this to a team? And how could you make this $1 million idea? And I'm like, there's also a thing called right sizing. And not every business, not every person has to want or has to be $1 million company or a $5 million company or have 50 employees. Sometimes it's about me and my team of 3 people and the work that we can accomplish in one day for that one client. That's what I'm satisfied with. And I have a little bit of money in the bank just for me, like to prove it. That's good enough for me. So I don't need a $1 million house or the Maybach or whatever. I don't need that. I can get by with I love the house I live in. We just redid our bathroom. Thank you to several clients that came along and just wanted all this extra stuff. And we're like, sure, we got you. And now we have a new bathroom. So just things like that. Like sometimes you get into this place where you think you have to keep growing and building and building and building when your lifestyle and your freedom are more important than the car and the house and the Gucci and all that stuff. It's about, I'll buy a Rothy's bag or a Kate Spade over that and be happy with the freedom that I have within my business to do what I want to do.
You brought up such a good point too, is a lot of us think that we need to follow what is expected or the social media expectation of success.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to really reflect and see what is our version of success and what is going to make us truly happy. Am I living the life that I want and that's going to make me happy? Or is it my friends, my parents, or my grandparents? And really shaping your life and your goals to reach your level of happiness, which is exactly what you did and what you just defined, which I love. And I always tell my clients, don't go with other people's version of happiness. You have to find your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could include things like traveling and things like that. My husband and I, a few years ago, for an entire year, we literally went somewhere every weekend, went out of town, flew somewhere. And because I had my own business and because he was working on something where his time was flexible, we just went places. We did cruises. We went to the Caribbean. We did a lot of things. We didn't spend a ton of money because we knew we could do those things relatively inexpensively and still have fun. We stayed at a lot of 5-star hotels. We did a lot of excursions and experience type things. And it was so much fun. And those years were so exciting. I just loved that year we did. It was so much fun. Now, do I need to do that every year? No. This year, we're doing a different adventure. We're having a baby.
Congratulations.
We're going to be here for a while. Not traveling right now, but that wouldn't have been something that I would have thought I could have done or would have been really difficult if I was working a full-time job and I didn't have that freedom and I didn't have the ability to be flexible with what I'm doing and take maternity leave for as long as I want and need. So there's things like that I'm building that life, spending those first 10 years of the business, struggling and hustling and getting it to that point and saying, all right, now we've made it. Now we've done this 10-year grind. Where can we start right-sizing it and adjusting it to say, this is the life we want to live? Because you do have to build it. It takes time. But once you get it built, it's like, now how do we shape it?
Yeah. And you can't, first of all, congratulations. This is like a big milestone for you both. So congratulations. And yeah, you just have to be able to see what you're willing to do and what you need to do to get to that level of happiness and just really create that life that you want. And like you said, you don't have to be traveling every year. You don't have to have the mansion. There's some things that, like for me, a simple house with 2-3 bedrooms, I'm fine. It doesn't have to have a big yard or anything, just a small garden to keep me busy. But other than that, but everybody just has to see what they really want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of building something that's stable, like I did with that other company, and then being able to pivot and then pivot again to this like day sessions. And then from there, going into shaping what I had already built. It's almost like you got to find the stone in the quarry before you can make the marble masterpiece, right? But you got to spend a long time finding that piece. You got to get the right one. And once you have it, then the shaping part is the fun part. That's the creative part. That's the part where you can say, I don't want to do this part anymore. I want to only do this part, or I want to hire someone to do that so that I can be over here doing this. And that's where a lot of the freedom comes from. But making sure that you have something stable enough to sustain that, building that foundation is super important. So I love talking about this stuff. I love explaining to people like how I got from A to B. It's not everybody's story. Not everybody can do exactly what I did, but I hope it's like an encouragement to say, these things are possible. It's not this pie in the sky idea that you're never going to achieve. When I hit 6 figures at one of the years that I was in the middle, it was like in the middle, it was like one of those milestones where you go, who am I? Who is the person? What am I doing here? And then sustaining that and growing that over the next 10 years, that was insane. Who does that? And it wasn't me. My family wasn't like that growing up. No one had ever done that. So when you get to some of these milestones, it's good to look back and go, no, I did that. I made that happen and I achieved that. And yes, you want to keep going forward, but at the same time, knowing that you got some interesting stuff under your belt. You got to remember that stuff's there.
Exactly. And appreciating yourself, giving yourself that pat in the back. And that's one of the things that we forget. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed in the now that we forget to look down and seeing how many steps we actually climbed thus far. And
Absolutely.
we're not the same person when you started the process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, with everything that you've gained, all that knowledge and experience that you've gained, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice that would help you, what would you tell yourself?
In 2016, when I was having the burnout moment, and I literally did like a chop all your hair off, take everything off your website thing, I was having a lot of health issues, and it was due to the hustle, the grind, everything that I had been doing for the last 5 or 6 years consistently. And I really let my health decline. And it was because I was networking 3 times a day. I was eating out 3 times a day. It was fast paced. I had to keep going. I had to keep moving to the next thing. McDonald's, Taco Bell, all that stuff was on my list. Sonic, okay, I'm driving through. And all those things really, yes, I thought they were helping me at the time to make things quicker, like to get things done. But at the same time, they slowed me down too, because then my health started to decline. And so that if anything, I would have seen a functional medicine person like 10 years ago, not 5 years ago. And then made sure that even if I thought it was more inconvenient to prep meals and things like that, fit that into my schedule. Like everything is planned, everything can be scheduled. I didn't have to watch YouTube for 2 hours on a Sunday morning. I could have been meal prepping. There's things like that, sacrifices we make. And so that if I had that advice prior, that would have saved me a lot of time later by being ill and having to take time off and having to go through some really hard things just with health and in general, and just feeling terrible and not being like my best in some of those spaces. That would have helped me accelerate things more quickly. But it also at the time would have slowed me down a little in my brain. Oh my gosh, I'm taking all this extra time. But really it would have helped in the long term. So health is really important. Functional medicine, I'm like a super proponent of that. And if you can find the right person and get your gut fixed, that pretty much fixes all your problems.
Yeah, and health and wellness is one of the biggest things that we tend to put to the side, me included, just because we say, I'll get to it later, I'll get to it later. But then later piles up and your body's, I've had enough. And why do we wait to that point? We have to get those checkups, get those dentist appointments, doctor checkups, everything, even your mental health. Go see a therapist every now and then. Just say hi, see what's going on. Because
now they got apps for that, right?
yes, go to BetterHelp or whatever it is. That's not a promo at all. But yeah, just check yourself and make sure that you're doing okay. And gut health is super important, especially everything that we're putting into our bodies. It shows up one way or another.
Yep, absolutely. So that would be my advice. Go seek a functional medicine person and get on some supplements, and it totally helps.
Yeah, definitely. And if we have a listener that may be going through that challenge of wanting to pivot into a new career or into being a business owner or letting go of their old business and going into a new one, what advice would you give them to help them do that pivot?
I would say to start that 10% process, bring in that new thing on a small scale, whether it's just maybe you're volunteering in that field, maybe you're working with someone else on the side and they have their business and you're working with them or for them. Maybe it's researching how to run that type of business if you've never been in that field before or in that business before. I would start that process and literally look at your calendar and set aside 10% of your time to that thing. And then start to slowly increase that. And slowly, if you can, decrease the other thing. And sometimes when you're working in a job, it's easier than you think to say to a boss, yeah, I know I'm working full time. I'll go down to part time and I'll work 4 days a week. I'll go down to part time and I'll work 3 days a week. I'll go down to part time and I'll work 2 days a week. You can slowly let yourself have this little exit. It's incredible how many full-time jobs actually will let you do that, especially if you're a good worker and you can get things done quickly. They're almost getting as much out of you as they would at full time, as in part time. But you've been giving you that time to say, this is my day to work on X. And I can be here for 4 days, but on Monday, this is my day to do all the things I need to do for my other thing. And as you start to slowly shift all of that, you might get down to 3 days a week at your old job and 2 days a week at your new thing and going crazy. And you're like, I'm making 3 times as much as I'm making over there. I don't need those 3 days. Like I really don't. And you can then you can move forward. You can move on. But let's start that process. Start that ratio switch. You got to have the ratio switch. If you don't, You will find that you leap too fast. You get into something you don't want to be in. It's not what you thought it was going to be, or you don't have enough information. You don't have enough knowledge to make it work. Just make that ratio switch first and slowly let it happen. And then when you get to that point where you're like, yeah, this is a tipping point, some's got to give, or I have so much income over here, I can move on, then just do it.
I love that. And because a lot of people we don't talk about this. It's the all or nothing mentality. And we think that in order for us to be a successful business owner, we need to quit our job and then go. But you always need a safety net. You can't just throw yourself out in the woods without any equipment. You need something.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's the best thing. And every time that I've jumped without doing that process, it fails miserably because it's just too much, too fast.
Yeah.
But every time I've used that process of that ratio switch, it works out, and I have a long-term sustainable product or business that I can move forward with.
I love that. What a wonderful piece of advice. Thank you so much. And this has been such a wonderful conversation. I want to keep asking you questions, but I'm running out of time.
I'll come back. It's fine.
Perfect. So I have one question for you to close up. The whole premise of this podcast is finding the unicorn in you. So in your opinion, either in a marketing aspect or just from all the pivots that you've done in your life, what is one thing that a person can do to start their unicorn journey and get them started with succeeding, hitting their passion and reaching success?
Yeah. So I think I go back to my mom's advice from the beginning. And it was something she said to me, she was literally like doing something else and wasn't even paying attention. She just said it. And I reused it and she said, pick 2 things you like and make a job. Make yourself a job. Not necessarily a business. That's not what she said. She said, make yourself a job. Because first you have to have a job before you can build a business. And that job has to be something realistic and it has to be something that people want. And when she said pick 2 things, I thought that was an interesting way of approaching it versus saying, I really like to go paddleboarding. Okay, sure. What are you going to do with that? People can come up with one thing they like to do, but can you find 2 things you like to do that actually could live and marry together? And you have enough passion for both that you would get up every day and put yourself out there and go and pound the pavement and be told no a million times. And you'd still go out and you'd still try and find those people to work with. And knowing that those people existed, right? So when she said pick 2 things, I said I like old people and computers. and we knew that old people and computers, they don't really go well together. And so how can I bridge that gap? How can I make it easy for them? Teaching classes, helping them fix their computers. Like it just all fell into place. And so if you're like, I like paddleboarding and I like working with kids, go to the Ys, go to your local community centers, say, I teach stand-up paddleboarding in pools for kids. I'm going to come and do a summer program for you. This is how much it costs. I'm going to bring the boards. Make something happen. Do one small thing. So picking 2 things you like, making sure they fit together, and then making yourself a job out of it and starting with that.
I love that. I love that. And I was actually thinking, I was like, did I pick my 2 things? And I did. So
yeah. Usually they just come to you.
Yeah. So that's wonderful advice. And if anybody wants to work with you or if they want to get in contact with you or have any questions, how can they do so?
I have business coaching sessions that I do, and I love working with people on that. And we also have our days, obviously our power days. You can go to getabsolutemarketing.com. And I do have a free pro toolkit, which is every tool that I use in my business, including the email signature that I created.
Perfect. Awesome. And I'll put all of that in the show notes so that they can easily click and go right through there. I do have a wall of fame that I'm going to be introducing on my website. So you're actually going to be on there and you'll have all the things in there with your face and your bio in there. So people can just look at the wall of fame of all the unicorns that have been on the podcast. So if you want, go to my website, ragozadesconsulting.com, and then you can look at all the unicorns that are there and all of their nice goodies in there too. But thank you so much for coming on and for really sharing all these wonderful tidbits. I've learned a lot. I hope that the listeners did too. And for listeners, again, if you like this type of content, leave us a 5-star review, and episodes come out every Friday at 7 a.m. But thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.